Hello my dear listeners and welcome to the Moon Dragon channel. I hope you enjoy tonight's video, which is about Elden Ring lore. Wish you all a good night's rest and stay cozy my friends. Long ago, in the vast enshadowed realm known only as the Lands Between, the world was cloaked in golden light. The Erdtree, vast and luminous, stood in the center of the world like a beacon, its roots deep in the earth, its crown brushing the stars. Its golden branches shimmered with the power of the Elden Ring, a mysterious force said to shape all that was, all that is, and all that could be. At the heart of this great power was Queen Marika the Eternal, a divine being chosen to bear the Elden Ring and rule over the realm. With her consort, the mighty Radahn, she maintained a fragile peace, upheld by the power of the greater will, an unseen force, distant and vast, that guided the fate of the world from beyond the stars. But not all was well, for the Elden Ring, though whole in appearance, was not a ring in the shape you might imagine. It was a collection of great runes, each one a concept: death, order, ambition, grace. When these runes were together, the world held balance. But as time passed, the Elden Ring began to fracture. And then came the day that shattered the world, the day Queen Marika struck the Elden Ring. No one knew why she did it. Perhaps it was sorrow, perhaps rebellion, perhaps it was something far deeper, etched into the bones of the world. But when the Elden Ring shattered, so too did the order of things. The Lands Between, once golden and still, fell into chaos. The demigods, Marika's own children, vied for power. Each took a great rune and waged war against the others, their ambitions staining the soil with blood and ash. This cataclysm was known as the Shattering. And so, the age of peace was over. The Erdtree closed its branches, turning away from the world. The guidance of grace dimmed, and in the silence, the realm waited. It waited for a Tarnished. Someone forgotten, someone exiled, someone like you. The world had fallen into quiet despair. The Erdtree, once radiant, now glowed with a hollow, distant light. The sky over the Lands Between turned strange, golden in places, red and cracked in others. Time moved oddly, like a dream on the edge of waking. Some places were frozen in stillness, others lost to eternal night or endless storms. The demigods who once dwelt in harmony had long since become monstrous or mad. Each clung to their great rune, refusing to let go of power, refusing to let the world be whole again. Godric the Grafted, twisted by ambition, carved limbs from fallen warriors and made them his own. Rune of the Moon, heartbroken and broken by grief, drifted through memory and starlight. Star-scourge Radahn stood at the edge of reason, his mind consumed by rot, locked. But in that stillness, something stirred. Far away from the heart of the Lands Between, beyond the fog and forgotten grace, the dead began to rise. Not in anger, not in terror, but in longing. The Tarnished, exiled long ago by the Golden Order, began to feel a whisper, a glimmer, a call. The grace they had lost flickered anew. Among the many called, there was one, you, a nameless, faceless figure, chosen not for greatness, but for the potential to reclaim it. Not a hero, but a remnant. The guidance of grace led you forward, showing you golden trails in the wind, curling like gentle flames toward the Erdtree. It didn't matter that you were broken. It didn't matter that you were forgotten. You were tarnished, and grace had returned to you. You awoke beneath the broken sky, not with fire in your heart, but with something softer, a feeling like quiet determination, a sense of being part of something older than yourself. The Lands Between were vast and full of danger, yes, but also full of memory, of stories, of songs half sung in wind and shadow. You took your first steps through Limgrave, where wild grass swayed and ruins dotted the land like fallen stars. Trees whispered the names of the past, and spectral figures drifted through the mist, bound to their last battles. You followed the golden light, not as a conqueror, but as a seeker, and in your quiet, steady journey, the world began to remember what it had forgotten. Beyond the green plains of Limgrave, to the east where the cliffs broke into sudden sea, you came upon a strange sight. A ruined keep, its gates broken, its halls echoing with the moans of spectral warriors. But above all the noise, one sound stood out, a howl, long, mournful, noble. It was there you first heard of Blythe. Blythe the half-wolf, a knight of proud bearing and gentle eyes. Though he towered over most men, clad in black and silver armour, he was not a beast. No, Blythe was a guardian, born of the stars and given form to protect the one he loved above all else, Ranni the witch. You met him in the wilds, howling at the moon not out of rage, but longing. He was searching for his lady, for his purpose, for a way back to the stars. Though he did not speak much at first, there was comfort in his presence. He was a companion not only in battle, but in quiet, a friend who understood silence. He told you stories in low, rumbling tones, of Nokron, the eternal city beneath the land, of Ranni, a princess not of the earth, but of the cold moonlight, who sought to free herself from the greater will's grasp. Blythe did not question her cause. He followed because he believed, not in her power, but in her dream, to choose one's own fate. In time, Blythe fought beside you, and yet even his fate would be touched by sorrow. For those bound by stars are not always free, and the stars, though beautiful, do not weep. But that tale, that part, we will come to later. For now, rest in the memory of Blythe's gentle growl. Let his stories cradle you, and his strength guard your dreams. In the quiet highlands of Liurnia, where the fog never fully lifts, and the air carries the scent of old books and rain, you found a place unlike any other. Raya Lucaria, the Academy of Sorcery, rose from the shallow waters like a crown of stone and starlight. Its spires reached for the broken sky, and its halls shimmered with magic long past understanding. And at the heart of that cold fortress was a woman who once held the world in her palm. Renala, Queen of Caria, mother of demigods, lover of Radahn, who left her for the Golden Order, left her with a broken ring and a broken heart. Once, she had ruled with wisdom and grace. She was a moonlit monarch, gentle but unyielding. Her love of knowledge was rivaled only by her love for her children. But when Radahn left her, when he became the consort of Queen Marika, something inside her changed. The moon no longer sang for her, the stars turned cold, and she folded inward. You found her not in fury but in mourning. She sat cradling an amber egg, humming lullabies to it, as though it were her lost child. Around her floated students made strange by sorcery, headless, faceless, enchanted to study forever. They protected her not out of fear but sorrow. They too remembered who she had once been. You did not raise your blade in rage. You did not come to conquer her. You came because the path of grace led you there, to understand, to listen. In battle, Renala did not scream. She whispered. She summoned the moon, a fragile glass sphere, and sent it toward you not like a weapon, but like a final dream she no longer believed in. Her power was not rage, it was grief, shaped into spell and form. And as the moon shattered, you could almost hear the lullaby again. You defeated her gently, and when she fell, she did not die. No, she remained seated in her library, still humming, still holding her amber egg. She offered you something strange, not hatred, but rebirth, a second chance, a reweaving of yourself. Renala could no longer guide her children, but she could still guide you. Not as a queen, but as a mother. A lost one, yes, but even the lost may comfort others. And so you left her in peace. Behind her throne, the great moon rose slowly through the broken clouds, pale, beautiful, watching. Far across the crimson wastelands of Caelid, beyond the rot-choked trees and the sky turned forever red, there was a warrior who stood so tall, so strong, that even once a noble son of Rune and Radahn, he had ridden mighty lions into battle, wearing golden armor and wielding twin curved greatswords large enough to cleave dragons in two. He loved battle, not for cruelty, but for the joy of challenge, the thrill of contest. And yet, he also loved learning. Radahn studied gravity magic, not to destroy, but to ride. His beloved steed Leonard was so small beneath his massive frame, yet he refused to abandon the horse. So he learned to bend the very stars, the weight of the cosmos, to make himself lighter, just so he could ride with Leonard, as he had since childhood. But when the world broke, and the scarlet rot spread across the land, Radahn fought to stop it, fought Malenia, Blade of Mikola, in a battle so terrible it poisoned the earth itself. The clash of their powers turned Caelid to ruin, and in the final moments of that duel, Malenia bloomed. A crimson flower of death, the scarlet Aeonia, bloomed in the heart of the battlefield. The rot consumed Radahn, not fully, not instantly, but slowly, insidiously. His mind unraveled. He wandered Caelid as a maddened husk, a giant among dust and disease, devouring corpses under a bleeding sky. Yet the stars remembered him. They did not move, not until he was defeated. And so a festival was held, not to mock him, not to glory in death, but to honor his strength, to end his suffering. Warriors gathered in Redmane Castle, drawn by fate and grace alike. They sang his name, they raised their blades. They prepared not to kill him, but to release him. You were among them. The battle was long. Radahn fought like a storm given flesh. Even broken by rot, his strength was legend. But when he finally fell, when your blade struck true, and the last of the rot faded from his eyes, something miraculous happened. The stars moved again. A streak of light tore across the sky, and far in the distance, a great chunk of heaven fell to earth. It was not an ending. It was a beginning. And deep beneath the place where the star had fallen, something ancient stirred. When the star fell, it cracked the world. A scar opened in the ground where it struck, vast and glowing, rimmed in crystal and ash. The lands between trembled, not in fear, but in memory. For the falling star had torn open the seal on something ancient, something long forgotten by gods and men. Beneath Limgrave, past the shattered cliffs and glowing stones, you found it, Nokron, the eternal city. It was not like the cities above. It did not breathe in daylight or echo with birdsong. Nokron was a dream caught in stone, built not toward the sun, but in reverence to the stars. Its buildings were silent and tall, its walkways paved with celestial dust. Above it all shimmered a false sky, an illusion of night that never changed, stars that never moved. As though time itself had grown tired, and the people of Nokron had once defied the greater will. They had sought to forge their own fate beneath the earth, away from the Erdtree's light. They crafted life in secret, silver tears, living beings formed from magic and thought, shaped like themselves but fluid, eternal. They rejected death and worshipped the stars, believing they would find truth not in order, but in darkness. But the greater will saw this, and did not forgive. Long ago, its agents struck, the finger creepers, the envoys of fate. They banished Nokron and its twin city Nokstella into darkness, cut off from time, cursed to remember but never return. And yet, here you were, walking their streets, brushing dust from their ancient runes. You fought no armies here, only echoes, forgotten guardians, weeping statues, and molten silver beasts that once dreamed of freedom. They watched you pass, not with hatred, but with mourning. You were not their enemy. You were just someone left behind, as they had been. Deeper still you walked, until you found a hidden place, a cradle in stone, and in that cradle, a husk of something vast, an empty shell, like the ghost of a god, the corpse of a dead great one, and near it, a treasure of strange power, one that whispered to you of cold love and distant moons, the Fingerslayer blade, a weapon not meant to wound the flesh, but to sever fate itself. You took it not for conquest, but for a promise, for someone who waited in shadow, for Rune. In a tower shrouded by mist and stillness, Among the ruins of Caria Manor, you met her again, Rani, daughter of Renala, daughter also of Radahn, but unlike her kin, she did not seek thrones or gold. She sought freedom. Rani had long since cast aside her flesh, shedding her body like an old robe. In its place, she wore the form of a doll, porcelain, cold, and perfect. But within that still face burned a mind like a falling star. She had made a pact long ago, chosen to slay her own fate, and in doing so, reject the greater will. She had stolen a fragment of death, the rune of death, once locked away by Marika to keep the world in stasis, had been stolen in secret. And with it, Rani had ended her own life, not out of despair, but out of rebellion. She chose to exist beyond the hands of the two fingers, beyond the laws of grace. She would be free. And now, she asked you to join her. Not as a knight, not as a tool, but as a companion. You accepted, quietly. From that day forward, your path was no longer your own. It belonged to the moon, to the stars, to a story written in silver and ink. Together, you descended into the depths of Noxtella, sister city to Nokron. There, you uncovered more of the past, twisting serpents of silver, ghosts of betrayal, and the memory of a war not recorded by the Erdtree's light. You battled, and in time, you found her enemies, those who would steal her destiny, a puppet traitor, a hidden assassin. All were silenced by your blade and your will. Rani watched, ever distant, ever quiet. But when you stood with her beside her true body, when her hand closed the final page of her defiance, she vanished. Not in death, but in purpose. She had begun her journey to become a god of her own making, and you were alone once more. But not forever, for Rani does not forget those who walk in darkness with her, and the moon always returns. Beneath the lands between, deeper than Nokron, deeper even than the roots of the Erdtree, there lay a forgotten place. Few dared speak of it. Fewer still returned from it unchanged. It was not a city. It was not a ruin. It was a wound. The subterranean shunning grounds. Once it had been a sewer beneath the capital Lanedell, but over time, it had become something else, a prison for the unwanted, a labyrinth of rot and despair where the light of grace could not reach. The walls wept, the roots curled inward, and in the deepest part of that endless dark, a flame burned. It was not warm, it was not golden, it was the frenzied flame. You first heard whispers of it from madmen by the roadside, their eyes wild with impossible knowledge. They spoke of a truth too terrible for the Erdtree to bear, a truth hidden by the greater will itself. They said the world was built upon lies, and that madness was not sickness, but clarity. They laughed and cried in the same breath. Their tears were joy, their joy was sorrow, and still you descended. Past the twisted pipes and forsaken graves, past omens too large for their tombs, past the silence of centuries, you found it. A door, and behind it, something, watching. You could not open it alone. It required you to be stripped, of power, of armor, of identity. To approach the frenzied flame, you had to abandon all masks. When you did, it saw you. The three fingers, burning, clutching, crawling in a frenzy of love that burned hotter than the sun. They reached for you not with hatred, but with embrace. Their warmth was overwhelming. Their touch promised an end, not only to pain, but to all things. A world without form, a world without grace, a world where no one would ever suffer, because there would be no one left to feel pain at all. To accept the flame was to become its lord, to walk the path of ruin. You felt it curl around your soul like smoke. You were marked, branded, changed. And yet, even then, it was not too late. You could still turn away. You could still seek the needle of Mikola, hidden in rot and guarded by the unbloomed, by Malenia herself. With it, the madness could be soothed. And you, tarnished, gentle soul, continued onward, carrying the burden of choice in silence. The fire burned in the distance, but your heart was not yet ash. To the south and east of the lands between, where the rivers had long dried and the trees bent under a burning wind, lay a land not dead but infected, rotting from the roots to the sky. The very air shimmered with poison, and the earth festered beneath your feet. This was the domain of Malenia, blade of Mikola, the most feared warrior in all the lands between, and the most tragic. She was born of the union between Queen Marika and Radahn, as was her twin brother Mikola. From the moment of her birth, she carried within her a curse, the scarlet rot, not a disease, but a divine decay, a rot that could not be cured, a rot that grew with her, bloomed with her, and whispered always at the edge of her soul. But she did not weep. Malenia trained as a blade. She fought not to destroy, but to protect. For Mikola, her brother, her creator, her dream, she bore the rot without complaint. He, in turn, built for her the Erdtree, a sanctuary away from the gaze of the Erdtree, a place where those cursed, rejected, or unloved might find peace. But Mikola vanished, taken by the dark god Moog, and Malenia was left alone. You found the Erdtree not through conquest, but through faith. You crossed frozen rivers, fought invisible assassins, and climbed the crumbling branches of a dream nearly forgotten. And at the heart of the tree, in a chamber lined with blossoms of crimson, she waited. Malenia, a golden goddess with a blade like light, her body wrapped in scarlet gauze. She stood tall, calm, silent, and when she moved, it was like wind through silk. Her first words to you were not of hatred. I am Malenia, blade of Mikola. Not a warning, not a threat, a vow. She was not fighting for glory. She was not even fighting for herself. She fought for a brother who could no longer answer. And when your blade met hers, it was like dancing with fire. She moved with grace no mortal could match, each step measured, each strike pure. Her blade, the hand of Malenia, cleaved not only flesh, but hope, and yet you endured. She fell once and rose again. Her second form bloomed like a flower made of death and stars. Scarlet rot, unbound, unfolded from her body like a petal uncurling to face the sun. Wings of rot, hair like flame, a bloom not of beauty, but of acceptance. She was no longer just a warrior. She was rot itself. And yet even then, even in her full, monstrous form, she did not scream. She did not beg. She simply fought. And when she fell, at last, gently, like a leaf upon the wind, she did not curse you. She whispered, Mikola, as if even in death, around you the petals continued to fall. The Erdtree sighed, and you did not feel triumphant, only still, only small, as though you had witnessed something sacred. You had walked so far, through rot and starlight, through madness and moonlight, through ancient cities and silent tombs. You had crossed lands carved by war, climbed trees that touched the sky, and listened to the voices of queens and gods and ghosts. Every step had left a mark. Every sword stroke had opened a new page in the story. Now, only one page remained. Leyndell, the royal capital, once glimmering with gold, now lay in ruin. Ash choked its streets. The wind was quiet, as if the very world held its breath. The Erdtree loomed above, still impossibly tall, yet scarred, burned, and sealed. The Erdtree, heart of the greater will, no longer welcomed you. It rejected you. Its doors, once open to chosen kind, were closed with flame. And so, with burning blade in hand, Melena's blade, you became kindling. You set the world alight. The Erdtree cracked, groaned, and opened, not out of invitation, but necessity. And beyond its roots, in the hushed golden fog, you found what waited at the end of all things. Radahn, the red-haired consort of Marika, the man who had been her second half. Not separate, but one. They had always been the same god, two souls in one form. Marika, the shaper of order. Radahn, the vessel of war. And now, as one again, they stood before you, silent and shining like shattered marble. He fought not with rage, but with duty. With each strike you felt the weight of law and legacy, but you had not come to obey. You had come to choose. When Radahn fell, the ground split, and the true god revealed itself, the Elden beast, a creature of light and water, shaped like a galaxy, its body made of stars and silence. It did not speak, it did not explain, it simply was. The will of the cosmos made flesh. You fought it alone, as all who walk the path of fate must. You dodged the constellations, you swam through the light, you endured, and in the end, you won. And then, you were left with silence. The thrones of the dead demigods stood around you, empty, broken, cold. The Erdtree's light shone dim. You stood before the rune of destiny, and you chose. Maybe you embraced the golden order, mending the world in the image of its former light. Maybe you chose Rani, your cold bride of starlight, and left the lands between behind, to walk among the stars, hand in hand, beneath a dark moon. Or maybe you knelt before the frenzied flame and let it all burn, freeing every soul from sorrow, letting the world breathe again without rule. Whatever you chose, the world changed, not all at once, but gently, like snow falling on old stone. And you, once a nameless Tarnished, were no longer forgotten. You were legend, and now your journey is over. Rest. Close your eyes. Let the fog roll in. Let the grace that guided you become quiet. You have walked the lands between, and you are home. In the quiet places where nothing blooms, there once was a child. His name was Mikola. He was not like the other demigods. While others roared with pride and sought to conquer, Mikola whispered to the land, to the sick, to the forgotten. He was gentle, not because he was weak, but because he saw a different kind of power. He was the twin of Malenia, and like her, he was born cursed. Where she carried rot, he carried eternal childhood. He could not grow. His body, forever young, masked a mind vast and luminous. While the others clung to the golden order, Mikola sought to remake it. Not destroy it, but heal it. Mend it. Graft it anew. He created the unalloyed gold, a metal so pure it could resist the influence of gods. With it, he built charms to protect Malenia from her rot. He even tried to bring peace to the cursed misbegotten. And then he planted a seed. Not just a seed of a tree, but a seed of hope, a sapling to grow into something that could rival the Erdtree itself, the Tree. It would be a haven for the unloved, a place where those cast aside by fate could thrive. But as the tree grew, Mikola fell into slumber. He cocooned himself inside its heart, resting there in divine stillness, dreaming of the day his tree would bloom fully and the rot would end. But he was stolen. Taken in the dead of night by a god who worshipped blood. Mikola was never meant to wake this way, and so he sleeps still, twisted in scarlet arms, his dream poisoned by ambition. Not all gods seek grace. Some drink from deeper wells, older, darker ones. Mohg, twin to Morgoth, was born an omen. His body was marked with horns and cursed blood. He was locked away deep beneath the capital, forgotten by his golden family. But in the silence, something ancient heard him, the formless mother. She was a being without shape, without words, without light. Her love was thick and cloying. Her gifts bled red. Mohg embraced her, and in return, she gave him power. Power over blood, over sacrifice, over dynasty. He escaped the sewers and carved his own place in the world. In a hidden palace beneath the great mountains, Mohg built an empire not of kingdoms, but of longing. There he gathered followers who believed in his promise, a new dynasty, with Mikola at its center, not as a prisoner, but as a god. But Mikola never spoke. He slept still, silent and pale inside the cocoon. Mohg anointed him with sacred blood. He offered sacrifices. He whispered vows of love and loyalty. But the child god never stirred. And still Moog waited, crown upon his brow, blade in his hand, believing with every beat of his corrupted heart that one day Mikola would awaken and love him back. But dreams are not born bruns, and gods do not rise on longing alone. Before the earth, they were vast, eternal, ancient as the winds. Their scales could not be pierced, their eyes saw time like mist. They did not worship, for they feared nothing, save one thing, death. When Marika sealed the rune of death, the dragons saw her as a usurper. Yet one remained loyal, a black worm named Fortisax, mighty and silent. He swore to protect the Prince of Death, Godwyn, who had died not in body but in soul. Godwyn's body still lived, a bloated, undead thing, but his soul had been devoured by Deathroot, and his dreams had grown twisted. Fortisax descended into those dreams, coiling around Godwyn's husk, fighting the creeping rot with storm and lightning. But even dragons cannot stop decay forever. Fortisax grew still. His mind, once vast, became trapped in the death dream. And so he waits, deep in deep-root depths, wrapped around a silent corpse, guarding a broken prince in a world where even immortality fades. The age of dragons has ended, only echoes remain. Not all stories are meant for sleep. Some are meant to linger in shadow. In the quiet corners of Lanedell, among the bones and broken, there lived a man with no name, no joy, no dream. He was called only the Dung-Eater. His curse was not a punishment, it was a seed. He bore within him a defilement so deep, so final, it corrupted the very soul of those he touched. No resurrection, no rebirth, only suffering. Forever. He believed the world deserved to rot, that life was mockery, that the cycle of death and rebirth was a joke played by gods. And so he spread his seedbed curses across the land, through corpses, through children, through innocence, each one a mark that would echo through bloodlines and ruin. Yet he did not scream, he did not rage, he simply sat, smiling, waiting for someone to feed him more. His dream was not to be Elden Lord, it was to end all dreams, to drown the lands between in filth and silence. And if you gave him what he wanted, he would thank you, and the world would never be clean again. You had a choice. After walking the land, after felling gods and fire, after bearing grace and flame and loss, you stood once more at the throne. But this time the moon waited for you. Rani, your cold bride, your queen of starlight, had returned. She offered not an age of order nor of fire. She did not promise peace. She promised freedom. The greater will, the Erdtree, the two fingers, all would be left behind. She would become a god, yes, but one beyond their grasp. A god of the moon, of the dark between stars, where no fate was written and no flame could follow. You placed your hand in hers, and together you turned from the Erdtree. You walked away, into a night that had no end, beyond time, beyond gods, beyond the lands between. From somewhere, far away from light and rot and grace, you found rest.